Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today as we talk with veterans and their journey transitioning from military service to first responders. As you may know, America's Warrior Partnership's mission is to partner with communities to prevent veteran suicide. We have put together as a special fireside chat that, from the little bit that I have taught with these guys, the theme around finding purpose post-service. These conversations have a tendency to bring up feelings and open old wounds. Please know that there are resources for you. The Veterans Crisis Line and TAPS, the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors. I encourage you to leverage these resources as they are appropriate for you and know that you are not alone. I'm going to do a brief introduction of myself. I think most of our viewers are probably fairly familiar with me. My name is Cheree Tham. I am the co-founder of America's Warrior Partnership and also the Chief Programs and Initiatives Officer here at our organization. Now today, I have a great group of guys that are going to talk to you about their military service and their transition into first responders. Let's get to know them a little bit first. Nate, I want to start with you a little bit.
Okay.
Could you tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell us a little bit about what you did in the service and what you're doing now.
Yeah, my name is Nate Rose. I grew up on the East Coast in New Jersey. Found my way into the Marine Corps, which I did 5 years. I was a Huey helicopter door gunner, crew chief. So as a mechanic, shot machine guns out of the side, tuned engines, various different positions there. Got out, didn't go directly into the first responder world, but kind of found my way eventually to wildland fire. And now I'm a smoke jumper with the Forest Service.
And how long have you been out of the service?
It's been 8 years now.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Will, we'll move to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my name is William Fitzpatrick. I actually grew up in New York, so not far away from Nate. I almost exactly the same. I did 5 years in the Marine Corps. I joined right out of high school in 2009. I got out in 2014. I've been out about 8 years, and I've been in wildland fire since 2020. I've been on a veterans hand crew for the last 3 summers, but very recently, it's kind of a long story, but very recently, due to a medical issue, I got switched over and I work at the tanker base here in Billings, Montana now.
Great. Thank you. Steve.
So I'm the oddball here. I served in the Army, not the Marine Corps. I did 6 years in, a good chunk of it with the 101st at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. I was raised in Kentucky, but after a few years in the area, after ATS, I moved out here to Idaho. And I've been out here with Ada County Paramedics as a paramedic and now a paramedic training officer for 24 years. So I'm the old guy in the bunch. I got out, to answer your question, I got out in 1995. So the Army, we wore different uniforms than you guys wear now. We wore the old Woodland BDUs and we polished our boots back then and all that other really horrible stuff that you hear people talk about like it was the caveman era.
So did any of you guys once, I didn't hear you say this, Steve, but I heard you and Nate say you didn't go directly into the job that you're in right now post-service. Steve, did you? Or?
I did. Okay. My pathway into that was kind of unique. My last 2 years at Fort Campbell, I was actually detached over to the hospital. And to make a long story short, they put me with the ambulance service and I went through paramedic school on Uncle Sam's dime. And that was fortunate enough. And I figured I had such a knack for it and liked it so much that when I ETS'd, I fell into a couple civilian gigs immediately after.
Nate and William, can y'all talk to us a little bit about what your experience was before you got to that led you to being a first responder? Post-service?
William, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so when I got out in 2014, I guess they tell you constantly before you get out, like your leadership, chain of command, they'll tell you, make sure you have a plan, make sure you this, that, and the third. And I, just like a lot of, young service members kind of gaffed off that advice. And, I got out without a plan. I was just happy to be, I guess, a free man in some sense of the word. And I just got like kind of an easy job doing maintenance in an apartment complex, and very, very quickly realized how much of a mistake that was, because, it's kind of like, it's kind of like what you were saying about, the loss of sense of purpose or whatever. For me, and don't get me wrong, I mean, it's important work. I don't want to like put anyone down who like does that type of work, but I was like cleaning up dog waste and, cleaning trash out of the ponds and replacing, appliances for old ladies. And just, about a month or two prior to this, I was a squad leader in the infantry, in the Marine Corps. And I just felt like, I don't know, super like down on myself a little bit, kind of like, what happened to me? I used to be such a hard guy, whatever, that kind of typical, I guess, typical stuff you'll experience. And then, from that point, I mean, I had a lot of different jobs. I bounced around a lot just because I never found any satisfaction anywhere. I didn't really feel the sense of camaraderie with my coworkers that I did in the military. And I was just unhappy everywhere I tried to go. Eventually it got so bad, I was a project manager for a construction company in New York City. And I was on a job site in Manhattan one day doing like an Excel spreadsheet. And I was just so like the tedium and the boredom was just got to me one day. And I got a friend of mine, I'm not sure, Nate may know him. His name's Brendan Robert, who jumped out of, he jumped out of West Yellowstone. But I called because he was always posting all these cool pictures on Instagram of him in fires and jumping out of planes, So I called him like on a whim one day and I go, how do I get into something like that? Is that something, And he's like, yeah, I'll put you in touch with my boss, Cody. And I got a call from Cody like a couple hours later. And he's like, yeah, Brendan told me that, you'd be interested in fire. I was like, yeah, sure. And I'm sitting on a job site in New York City. I'm a kid from Brooklyn, New York. And 6 months later, I'm in a car with all my stuff packed, driving to Montana, driving across the country to go fight fire, thinking like, am I making a mistake? This seems like a very big leap to make. But at the end of the day, it was one of the best life moves I ever made, because that camaraderie and sense of purpose, I got it back big time in this line of work.
I'll second exactly what you said. There's about a 2 week, 3 week, maybe not quite a month gap between when I got my offer for employment and when I actually ETS. I didn't have anything lined up because, like you, I was like, oh yeah, it'll fall in place. It didn't fall in right away. And I was unprepared for just I don't want to use the term depression lightly, but man, it was a night and day difference. You wake up one day and you have it just, there's a void. And, suddenly I'm like, how am I going to get this back? And it was a sigh of relief and a weight lift off my shoulder when I got my gig, my first job in Tennessee as a paramedic. So.
Oh, great. Thank you, Steve. Nate?
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting you say, William, that, when you're getting out, they tell you to make sure you have a plan. And I got pretty lucky in that my plan kind of lined up with this new passion that I found for the outdoors. So my plan was purposely to not have a plan. So everybody that I work with, they're like, that's ridiculous. If you get out, you're going to fail. But my plan was basically, I wanted to go and try to kind of jack it down a little bit. I was really wound up, especially being from the East Coast and then being in the Marine Corps. I felt like I was a wire ready to break, and I knew that I needed to just unwind. So my first thing I did when I got out is I went to Nepal and I did this Everest base camp trek just to try to get away from everything that I had been doing for a long period of time. And while I was out there, I found what I needed, but I also realized that I wanted to kind of get into mountain climbing. So that's kind of where my life went for a while. Is I found a school that I could use my GI Bill to become a mountain guide. So I worked on that for a long time, and I kind of found that sense of camaraderie that I needed with those same types of people. So I got really lucky in that aspect. But there was a time when I had a pretty bad experience in the mountains, and I realized that I didn't want to put myself in dangerous situations with someone that might be there for the wrong reason, maybe a Facebook photo or whatever the case may be. So I decided that I wanted to continue the climbing and continue that passion, but I wanted to do it on my own terms. Wasn't sure how to do that. So I ended up moving back to Philadelphia, got a job there and kind of started seeing what a normal life was like. But I started to feel pretty isolated, which is not good. I think that's one of the major issues that veterans feel when they get out, is that isolation. And that just leads to depression. So you need to be around good people and people that help bring you up, and you need to have that sense of purpose. And I didn't feel that when I was there. I was working at a high-rise window cleaning and janitorial service in the city. It was fun. I was working with good people, but I just didn't really feel like I was passionate about it. And I needed to figure out a way that I could work in a job that I could be passionate about, but also be around solid people that are going to bring me up and make me better. So I started making phone calls myself. One thing led to another, and I ended up on Folsom Lake Veterans Crew in California, which is a Type 2 IA fire crew. I got that call. I talked to them a lot, and I talked to crews all over the country, and figured that was a good place to go. And going to that crew specifically changed my life, because I met a lot of really, really good people that set me on the path that I am today. And I'm pretty happy to be where I'm at. So I think just to sum it up, it's great to have a plan, when you get out, but sometimes you got to kind of let life drive you a little bit more. If you're too planned out, sometimes you miss the big opportunities.
Hey, Nate, did you reach out to any of your Army buddies when you were kind of wandering the world trying to figure out what you're going to do?
Yeah, I talk to kind of everybody at all times, and especially
Marine Corps buddies. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. I know what you meant. Yeah, I would, I'd post a lot of pictures. I was really into photography as a hobby. So I'd post pictures of wherever I am all the time. So I'd get people reaching out to me. I'd reach out to them, and I'm just was in continuous contact with them. And there were some people that luckily it seemed like I inspired to do sort of the same thing. So I think it kind of helped others in demonstrating what I was doing. But also, yeah, there were a lot of people that are like, I need to get out and figure something out. How do I do it? And I had a bunch of people reach out, which was pretty great. I think I was able
to. The reason I was asking is I heard William mention that he had some contacts with some of his former Marine Corps buddies that helped him out. And where I'm at now, I wouldn't have been here now if I hadn't reached out to an Army buddy I served with, who also is a paramedic, and is actually now he's my boss. He's our chief after 30 years. But I think that's probably an important lesson. Don't be afraid to reach out to your old buddies in the civilian world to try to find your path if you can,